Not
So
mine. Okay.
if people are fine, that is.
Oh,
Uh,
hi.
so there was a neighborhood library that we would go to, and my dad would take me,
Mhm.
and they had a 24 book limit. So I would pick all these books, big ones and small ones, and I would cry like, can I pick a 25th? Can I pick a
House
26th?
so that they get to buy people.
Try to explain to me that you could come back next week. You know how the libraries have they have the library card, and then you write the due dates when you check in your book and all that. So she said you can come back next week for the rest of the books, and I would cry and I would say, but I want to know what is inside. I want to know what is inside all of them, all of the books. But yeah, so that was how bad, quote unquote, or how good, depending on how you look at it, it was. And so that was pretty much childhood. And then around when I was 10, I started to host a children's program on TV. And maybe those of us who grew up in Ghana might remember it. It used to be called Fun World. And I was the Fun World girl. So it's like, you know, every Sunday after church, my parents would drop me off, and then I'll be there. We'll host the program. So I was basically the presenter. I'd interview the people that were, you know, somebody says, "Oh my gosh, Fun World!" Yeah, Fun World and Kidda Fest. So I'd interview people. I would like be comfortable on stage in front of large audiences, talking about what the show was going to. We had like themes around diaspora themes and environmentally conscious things, even at that age. And it exposed my love for communication and my flair for public speaking. And my parents nurtured it. And yeah, I don't know how many of you've seen this. I see her on. Sorry, someone muted me. So I don't know if you've seen her. Her name is Nakiat. Nakiat the poet. Sorry. Yeah, so there's this girl who won this competition, Ghanaian Talented Kids or something. And when I watch her, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this takes me back. Like I feel like I'm watching myself. But yes, quite a precocious child, and that is what I spent my time doing, reading and communications and all that kind of thing. So it wasn't really leaning towards the doctor track, really. And maybe that's why the lawyer seemed more probable because of the outspokenness and then the flair for public speaking. And then I went to SOS. I mean, I guess is the best secondary school in Ghana, but I shouldn't have gone there. I mean, I shouldn't have gone there for being perfectly fair. I remember right before I went there, my dad was like, "Oh, so it's time for secondary education, and she can go to Achimota school just like all her siblings before her did, because there had been five already that had passed through that, and he'd been there as well, and it was a perfectly good option." My mother insisted, and she was like, "No, I wanted to go to SOS. I really wanted to go to SOS." And at the time, my dad, he was like, well, he had not been employed. Well, he was consulting freelance and all of that, but he had not been employed since I was 6. So we were not ready to pay for SOS, or he was not ready to pay for SOS. And he said that quite clearly from the outset. He said, you can go ahead and do it, but don't come crying when you get stuck in the middle, because, you know, um, this is not what I planned for, and I can pay comfortably for. Actually, I'm sorry. There are coyotes outside my gate. Um, they're actually dogs, and they're not my dogs, so I think there's a street fight. So please pardon me. Okay, so he said to her that the SOS is not about to be this burden, and I know that it sounds good and you want this, but then it's not realistic. And she had a shop at the time where she sold leather goods, and she was like, you know what, I'm going to basically put everything that I make from this shop and then like pay for this education. And that's how it happened, literally. From term to term, SOS in there, go and pay before you collect a sheet of paper to show that you have paid before they even let you in at the gates, So that was how it happened from term to term. I didn't see what was happening behind the scenes, but it was not like a walk in the park for her at all. And that was good because I think that positioned me to be able to apply to schools outside the country, because that's where most people in SOS were doing. That's what they were doing. And because of that, going to an American university became this goal that was realistic for me. And it may not have been the case if I had been elsewhere. So yeah, so that was the journey, and it was like I was saying this on a call that I had early on this week, that it's like you have to keep up with the Joneses. You've come here, and it now starts to put pressure on you. You think that okay, it's just the school fees that you have to pay for to get your child to have this education, but because of the networks of people there, it now comes with additional costs because other people are doing extracurricular activities that then you then feel pressure to pay for. Or even when they want to come and visit you at home, you panic because you are going to be exposed as a fraud, like you're not as wealthy as the rest of them. So some of these social economic factors are very interesting. And I mean, it was nice when I was applying to American schools to find that there were a lot of, well, not enough, but need-based opportunities. And they focused a lot on diversity, not just diversity, ethnic diversity, but socioeconomic diversity as well, so that those who may not be able to have, were coming from maybe low-income neighborhoods where they couldn't have gone to very expensive or well-funded high schools, had the chance to come to private institutions that cost $60,000, $70,000 a year at a subsidized cost for the families. So, education is something I'm super passionate about, and yeah, I'm grateful that I had a scholarship and I was able to do that. Cool. So I think really time in university, I don't think I'll spend too much time chatting about that. And post Duke working, I wasn't really fulfilled because I had a job, but I was like, okay, my education costs too much for me to be doing this. I don't know if anybody's had that moment before, but I was like, okay, I did the math mentally and I was like, it's literally going to take me over 10 years to pay back my university education on this salary. Not that when you come out at entry level, you're supposed to be earning that much, but it was a job in PR that I felt like, you know what, the investment, you feel embarrassed to an extent because you're like, okay, my parents didn't sacrifice all this for me to come and be doing, events here and there and PR, and then no shade to that industry or anything like that. But it was like the expectations were just so high. And I just felt like a disappointment in a lot of ways. And then I decided to move home around 2013. So I made my way to Ghana, and I was like, yeah, at least here, it's going to be home soil. And I don't feel like there's going to be as much of a glass ceiling, because that's the way I feel about the US is that like, you can be as good as anything, but I mean, come on, like once you're not from there, and I'm just trying to keep it as open and transparent on this call as possible, it's not your country, it's not your country. You can excel, you can do well. Immigrants may do well, but there are barriers that will limit you. You can't even apply for certain jobs unless you are a citizen. That's how they also protect their citizenry as well. Okay, so came to Ghana and I was like, okay, let me start my job search. And because I had been working at PR, I ended up in marketing for the first stretch. And I was working at Ogilvy, and it was really good opportunity in a sense. I enjoyed it. It was a very collaborative atmosphere. I had clients who I cared about, and I really just committed myself to just having a spirit of excellence and everything, and making sure that I was providing that value and being that person that, it wasn't just about billing the clients. And I'm not trying to be idealistic here. It wasn't just about the money. I cared, but I did, because I was thinking about it as a business person, where it's like, okay, so for a business, there are definitely problems that they wake up with on their mind. You're just a marketing agency that they use. But if you can offer them value in a form where they look at it as this person is a resource person that I can call and ask about topics A, B, and C, and they'll know what to do, they value you so much more, because then you're not just somebody that they pay, you're actually somebody that becomes indispensable. So it's always just like, okay, so be indispensable to this client. And then, of course, it trickles down, and then the company values you as well. Because, I mean, if the clients value you and you bring in that value and they see that retention in your portfolio, then it begins to make sense that like you're a high performer. And then you build the trust that you need to make sure that you have that reputation for excellence. So that's how that went. And my mother started crying. She was like, "You didn't go to school to come and be doing marketing, blah, blah, blah." And at this point in time, I was just like, okay, I know that I went to school and I studied econ and other things that were harder. Like I heard you guys talking about econ at the beginning of the call, and I was laughing about it because, yeah, it's not fun. But I had studied all that, and he just felt like it wasn't serving the purpose for which I studied it if I was doing marketing. So why wouldn't I do something more hardcore? Why wouldn't I do something more finance related, etc., etc.? Now everybody comes to Ghana and they just get stuck working at a bank. And I really didn't want to do that. But at the same time, it was like, okay, so if you want to, unless you're going to go work as an analyst or, stock brokerage or something, okay, these are the opportunities that exist. So I went into banking, and I was like, yeah, I need to be in oil and gas, because that's where the money is. The oil and gas industry was doing really well in Ghana at the time. And essentially, that's where the brightest and best of the bank were being put, right? So I, being the competitive person that I am, and fancying myself as worthy, I said, yeah, I need to be in oil and gas. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. Well, unfortunately, at the time, that's how I perceived it. I was in risk management instead, and it couldn't have been a better decision that the bank made. So that's where I learned so much. I think that period was definitely a period of just like being, like instilling everything that later on began to yield opportunities that came later on. And it also seems like the darkest part of my career. Like it seems like the least exciting, the least well paid, all of that. But at the same time, I did learn these indispensable skills, and I added it on to, what I already naturally possess. Like I've spoken about, communications flair and reading and writing and trying to add value to people, and that experience that I had from working in PR in the US and then at the agency in Ghana. So yes, that was great, and I am really grateful for that experience, because the analysis and the learning how to work with tools and structure certain corporate finance transactions became really valuable even in my next role. And yeah, so when that opportunity came, and sorry, let me say this because I think I skipped it. While I was in Chicago, I I was unhappy. I was deeply unhappy because I found my job very unfulfilling. And I met somebody that ended up being a colleague of mine much later down the line. So it just speaks to the importance of networking. And it was very serendipitous because I wasn't supposed to be there, or I felt like I wasn't supposed to be in Chicago at the time. But this person was a friend of my brother's from Achimota School, who was doing his MBA at Northwestern, which was close enough. It was in Evanston. He would come and see us at our house, or my brother's house, from time to time. So he and I became friendly. And so fast forward to when I was in banking, and then I started to get restless and bored and looking for an opportunity to transition, not just out of the job, but out of the industry completely. I'll tell you how he became relevant at that time. But I started looking for opportunities to leave banking. So I kept my ears and eyes peeled. I was talking to everybody, looking, I mean, as one does, looking online, putting up Google alerts on, turn on those Google alerts if they're not on already, going on LinkedIn, looking for roles, and just knowing that I needed to position myself to be able to. So I was like, okay, my CV is already updated, my resume is already updated, and I'm just looking for the right opportunity. So I moved out of risk management into corporate finance actually, and then started doing the frontline work that I had initially wanted to do that I wasn't ready for, to be honest. I benefited a lot from that basically back office learning and being in a cost center, not necessarily making money, but being in a support role and learning the hard things that I needed to be able to sell the products that I was structuring when I was in risk management. So I started applying to companies and I started applying to Google. I applied to Google for almost, I want to say 15 to 18 months. And it's funny because my ex-colleague has just joined. Hi, Mandy. But yeah, so I was applying to Google at the time. So there was a Google Ghana office in Accra, and I kept applying to these roles, and I had interviews scheduled repeatedly. Because the team that was doing most of the interviewing was based out of San Francisco, there were so many late nights, like they're 7 hours ahead, so there'd be 11 p.m. midnight interviews and things like that. And I remember there was one that I prepped for, I think I over prepped for, and I stayed back at work the entire day and logged into this 11:30 p.m. interview, and I was waiting and she didn't show up. And I think I was so gutted because I was like, wow, like these people don't know that they need me. And clearly, like I just needed that opportunity to show that I was perfect for the role, and I wasn't even being given that. So it's the saddest thing when you're in a role where you're ready to leave and it's not happening. So I completely empathize and I try to help folks in their job search like whenever I can. It's not easy in Ghana at the moment, guys. Stay in school. But just kidding. Yeah, so eventually I mean I didn't get that role that I was looking for. And I was like, okay, well, I guess here's another year at the bank. Let me just continue with my head down or look elsewhere at other international companies that I'm targeting. But I kept my eye on LinkedIn because I was like, okay, well, this role was in Accra, Ghana with Google, and I'm about to see who got it. The person is here in Ghana with me, and they're going to update their LinkedIn at some point. So I'm looking out to see who they are. So imagine my surprise when I log into LinkedIn one day and Mr. A updates his LinkedIn status, and it's like, blah, 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 started working at Google Ghana as insert role that I had just been interviewing for and wanted so badly. And it turns out to be my brother's friend from, the States. So I was like, okay, this is interesting. Fancy, the odds. But so I reached out to him and I was happy for him. I was like, yeah, okay, congratulations. Now I don't need to get my updates on Google Alerts anymore. I can get them on WhatsApp because now I have an insider. So it happened to be like a blessing in disguise that I didn't get that first role. I didn't know anybody there. I didn't know anything about what the structure was or the culture, anything. But he was now working there and I was in touch with him. And then I said to him, I know you just started last week and all, but just keep me in mind and keep me in the loop if anything opens up and all of that. So eventually something opened up, I think about 8 months into when he had started working there. And guess what? The role was all about risk management. The role was all about compliance and it just like fell into place. And this was a department that I didn't even want to be in, but it was an operations role. It was in risk, and Google is a software company, so they don't typically sell anything, hard. But here they were in Ghana and they had built metro fiber and they were trying to figure out how to sell to telcos, trying to figure out the banking system, figure out credit, how to, like sell to people and not collect immediately, or even, most of e-commerce you pay in advance. So all of this was news to them. So I was like, oh, I can help with that. And it was just like, yeah, my friend was also there now, became my colleague from the time when I met him in Chicago. And then this role just happened to fit in very well with exactly what I want. And I was so happy because I really enjoyed the work. And I finally got to be in tech like I always wanted. And I got to do risk management. So I was actually bringing value to them because it was something that they needed an expert on. So that's how that happened. And honestly, I didn't intend to leave that job at all. I was very happy to stay. I didn't have any complaints. I always say that I would hang out with friends and they would complain and say, yeah, I hate my job, but it's actually possible to have a job that you don't have negative things to say about. So guys, it's possible. But I really enjoyed that job. And when the Uber opportunity came, I didn't want to, I felt like, okay, this is something that I would have wanted to do in a year or two, but why now? And why I didn't even want to apply. And I didn't think I was going to get it anyways. I was just like, okay, well, let's see. Sometimes you need to just check your value on the industry, like, on the market and see what's out there, throw a few, bits out there and see if something bites. Okay, so I looked at it and I was like, okay, this is very operations based, monitoring metrics. I was doing that, monitoring the Google sites in Ghana. This is very policy based as well because there are lots of regulatory issues that Uber deals with. And I was dealing with regulators in my role because I was doing risk management and compliance. So I was like, okay, this is actually not so far off. Let me just throw it in. Maybe, but I didn't really care about the outcome. So I was very confident because I was like, get it, fine. Don't get it. I have a job that I love. So whatever. So threw it in and just moved on with my life. And the best companies don't ask for much on the applications. Like it's literally just your resume. You'll find some job and then they want you to write a whole 5-page essay of your life and yeah, anyways. It was an easy application, let me say, but the interview process is where they get you. Right? So it's easy. You just send in your resume and then now you start a 10-step journey to finishing your interview process. So once I started, I had my initial call with the recruiter. And like I said, because I didn't really care about the outcome, it was just a breeze and there were no nerves. We got along. He's like, yeah, I want to push you through. I'm like, oh, okay. So let's start the process. And that started this whole 3 to 4 month process of just project after project, business models, analytics tests, presentations to management. And they were facing some very key issues. I can chat about that if you guys are interested. But at the time, they were trying to figure out cash collection. Uber is a closed system. It's all supposed to happen in the app, right? The tech is there. Your bank info is fed in. You get in the car. That's the magic experience. You get in the car or you order your food. It comes, you pick it up, and that's it. So the bank and all the logistics is in the background. It's happening in your email, and it doesn't require you to be looking for 5 cedis change, right? But you come to third world countries, and the experience is very different because cash is king here. And unless you want to exclude 80-90% of your base, you've got to learn to accept these payment methods. So Uber had to pivot in that direction. And unfortunately, they didn't do the background work to figure that out. Honestly, sometimes I marvel how a company as big as that, made this error, but it just speaks to some of the lack of focus in emerging markets, right? So this was a problem for those who it's a problem for. It's not a problem in the US, it's not a problem in Europe. So if you're not collecting cash, you're not doing well in sub-Saharan Africa, because all the money that you're making is in the hands of your drivers, and they're not bringing it back to you. But because it's not impacting the business on a large scale or in the A and B markets, it's difficult for it to be perceived, and therefore it's difficult for you to get the engineering resources and get the business development and partnerships that you need to unlock those payment methods, and include those of us here that also want to have access to the product. So around that time, like, they had big problems that needed solving. And that's why the interview process, I believe, was as stringent as it was, because they wanted, this person who had never worked in their organization before to be coming in with a plan of how they were going to fix cash collection in 60 days. I'm exaggerating, but yeah, that just to give you some context. So it was really grueling. That process was difficult. And the more I put in effort, the more I wanted it, because I'm like, okay, well, we're invested at this point, so I gotta get it. Yeah, I'm not about to have spent how many 10, 15 sleepless nights working on this thing for them to come and tell me, thank you for your application, and it was very strong, but blah, blah, blah. Yo, please, can we all just declare that we don't want to see that again in our lives? Because, yeah, those sentences are just the worst to read. Like, I have flashbacks from college applications where, it was a very competitive year. But yeah, so I wanted it at that point because I had put in the effort, and I was like, okay, you can't say no to what you don't have. You can only say no to something that has been offered to you. No one has given it to you. Who are you to say no? And that's usually the advice I give people when they're like, I want to apply for this job. I saw this job. They'll see the job today, and I'm talking about it 3 days later and saying, yeah, but if I get it, I may have to move. And like, as if somebody has offered them the job. Do you see what I mean? Like, we will figure that part out later. It's not like they've told you that, you've been considered for the job or it's for you, and then you're here discounting it. And yeah, but then even if I don't even think that I like this, and like all those things, let it be on your plate, let it be offered to you, and then you can come up with those excuses. But if no one has offered it to you, don't discount it, and don't find reasons to say no for no reason. So I don't like that, but that's just me sharing that. Okay, so I wanted it, and eventually they offered this job, and I was like, wow, okay, so I actually have to leave my job and go and handle drivers. My mother was crying again. She was like, why would you leave Google and go and work with taxi drivers?
Actually.
Why would you go and work with taxi drivers? Like, listen, what's the name of their generation crowd? I think the baby boomers or what? They don't know any, they do not know what this app is about, right? My mother can call me at 10. Oh, won't you call an Uber for my friend? And like, she's going somewhere around. I'm like, oh, girl, what's the address? But they are a different generation, and she really didn't understand it until people started saying, oh, your daughter is country manager for Uber. Like, for her, it had no value. Okay. So it's just interesting that all of these tech companies that are springing up now, it's like, we regard them because, like, millennials, we are the first people that were really interacting with social media, and then kind of like also grew up in the analog age. And so we've seen that these companies that didn't exist in the last 10 years, 15 years are becoming like the hotspots for the next big thing career-wise. And it's just really cool. So then I had to resign from my role that I loved so much, and I went ahead and I did it, and I just stepped into the unknown at Uber. So yeah, this is not supposed to be.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, like, for this stage in your career, I'd really like people to be able to ask questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, just so if people have any specific questions about things that you have done over the past 2 years, or very in-depth very in-depth questions, they can just be specific and ask. So we're going to open it up to our audience. So yeah, you can either raise your hand or you can just unmute and ask your question. I see some familiar faces Mhm.
So hi, Jessica, thank you very much for a lovely introduction. It was very nice to see how things don't just happen that one day you wake up and have this big position at Uber. It's actually quite a lot of process have to happen for you to get to that stage. I was wondering, once you got into the role, how quickly did you start addressing these different issues? And did you feel that there was a lot of, that management was open to these new suggestions? From what you said, I guess they were aware that they had at least the cash issue that they really needed to solve ASAP. But how much were they willing to change what they were used to in order to achieve these things?
Thank you. Okay, so a week at Uber is a very long time. It's a very, very long time. We have an ecosystem where everything runs on a weekly schedule and a city schedule. So for this week, we could have a completely different set of initiatives running, and then the next week is different. That's why no one takes 2 weeks off, because you'll come back and you don't recognize the company. But so to answer the first question of how quickly did I have to start solving these issues, it was like lightning speed. Okay, so drivers had been used to not paying service fees for 2 years plus. Uber launched in Ghana in 2016. I got the role at the end of 2018. I was starting, let's say January 2019. And this is behavior that has been fossilized over 2 years, where they know that they take a trip, it costs 10 CDs, it costs 50 CDs, and all of it is this. There's no conversation about paying for the service. They didn't have a concept of, why should I pay for the service? It's free. And we have to explain to them that there's tech that goes into this, there's customer service, I must be paid, there's marketing and all of that. And we charge 25% for rides that are booked through the app. So that driver education piece was a huge one. I got really to do it my way. So in terms of how receptive to input they were quite receptive to that, because at least the understanding at Uber is that no one knows your market like you do. Of course, there are central resources that we leverage. So the business development team will usually be the experts who will say, we're going to go with this partner or go with this partner. We don't have a way for drivers to come and give us the cash physically. And we don't have a mobile money account that they can send it to. In Ghana, mobile money is very popular for those who don't know. But yeah, we don't have that. So we need a partner or a third-party collections company that we can leverage. And so maybe for me, I'm like, okay, in Ghana, I know who's the best in this and I can get them. I have the relationships already. Those sorts of things I may get pushed back, because it's like, in any organization that's global, you want something that's scalable, that can be replicated in different markets. You don't want to start a partnership with, say, ExpressPay in Ghana, then have another one in Nigeria with OPay, then, and so on and so forth. So you want a large partner that can scale across markets.
So they were looking for you to create a solution which would work across Africa and other developing markets.
Exactly. So as much as local nuance mattered, because in Ghana had like the biggest cash problem, like more than the other markets, more than South Africa, more than Nigeria. Nigeria had Uber since 2013, but because at the time cash was not a thing on Uber, Nigerians got used to paying with card for 3 whole years before they started paying with cash. So the behavior there is very different. It goes to Nigeria, and drivers don't have a problem as much with they're now learning that behavior from Ghanaians. But before, they just accept card trips because they were used to it. Okay. So you're looking at the mark. Ghana has the biggest cash problem. So from my perspective as Ghana country manager, I'm like, the biggest cash problem is here. So we need a solution that works for Ghana. Okay. But the focus of the company will then clash with my view, because then it's like, no, we need a solution that works for maybe the whole of Middle East and Africa, and even LATAM, because Mexico and co have this cash issue too. So we need a solution that works for everybody. So in that case, then we can't solve it locally. And the more that we solve it centrally, the less visibility that I have. And so one of the most challenging aspects of a large company is fighting for visibility, fighting for resource prioritization, because in any economy with limited resources, you literally have to fight or show clearly, AKA make a business case, or fight or shout to make sure that your market is prioritized and receives the attention that it needs. Okay. And some of these things it's all about numbers, right? So if you're bringing in that money, if you're bringing in the gross bookings or GBs as we call them, then your case is a bit easier to make, right? Because then it's like, okay, this is a high priority market. We're going to make X amount of GBs, and it's data with us. So yeah, long answer. I'm going to stop giving long answers.
Thank you, Vasca, for that question. Anyone else, you can unmute or raise your hand. Yes, Prempe.
Yeah, so I mean, thank you very much for the presentation. I like the biographical sketch of yourself because it gave me hope that I can also do something because I'm a Zango man. My question is, how does the road networks in Ghana affect your business? You know, the way the roads are constructed. And then the second, in fact, at some point I developed interest in writing about new social cultures in Ghana with the advent of Uber, because in the case of the trotro, you have people talking, gossiping here and there, receiving unsolicited counseling, you know, being preached to all the time. And I looked at how that in itself fed into a certain sense of sociality that we have or had as a people. But all of a sudden there's Uber, where it is one man, one seat, one car. And I was thinking about how that in itself is breeding a culture of individualism that maybe in the long run may have implication for group living. This is not a critique of your business, but it is just my own academic curiosity, just to understand how things are playing out in more recent world. The third one is there's a new movement that is seeking to play down on vehicles, the use of vehicles. I think in some part of Europe, there's a campaign to foster the use of bicycles and people doing more walking as opposed to driving, just to decongest the city, so to speak. And I know in Ghana, that culture will be difficult, but not impossible to happen because of how the roads are constructed. Currently in the UK, especially in Birmingham, where I'm currently residing, they are trying to create bicycle, paths for those who want to cycle, of course, also in the face of COVID-19. So I don't know how all these feed into your work as a manager of Uber. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I had to make notes so I didn't forget your questions. First one, road networks. It's challenging. I think we have to leverage infrastructure that already exists. So if you look at companies like Uber, Airbnb, and such, we're leveraging infrastructure that already exists. So if you go to a country where people don't have nice houses, you can't say, Airbnb doesn't have nice houses. Do you understand? In a similar way, you're like, oh my gosh, Uber in Ghana is so bad because the cars are bad and the roads are bad. Trust me, we get that kind of feedback, and usually it's misdirected product feedback because it will reflect the state of the city in which it's operating in. Google Maps, for instance, so we have maps, we have our own maps, we have Google Maps, and we leverage that. So if there are roads that are yet to be updated on them, it's either Google Maps is updating it or we're updating it on our maps. So we rely on feedback because think about it, tech, it's like the back end, right? So the machine doesn't know that there's a road there unless you tell it that there's a road there. So unless somebody reports it and says, and I've had this happen, like I appreciate it so much, like people report and say, there is this lane by my house, there's a cocoa seller there, it's not a road, but every time we get there, the application says they should turn and no car can enter that street. So can you guys do something about it on your side? And then we'll open it on our end, and then we'll block it off on our end, and then it's like through the feedback we iterate and then we improve upon the maps and the intelligence. So that's the extent to which we can help. And it's like, we can't be there. That's the importance of feedback. We can't be there in the car even when you have a ride. You have to give feedback. Drivers give feedback on riders give feedback on drivers. It's a two-way system. And then obviously give feedback about the roads as well. And then we make the changes on our side. But we've had significant challenges in markets where folks just don't have the culture of reporting. Folks just don't have the, like, they'll talk about it with their friends. They might post about it on social media. They'll send a WhatsApp voice note, but you can't trace it. You don't know which road the person is talking about. They just say this, and it's like, now you can't even reach out to them. You can't find that account. So that's a problem that we face a lot. Okay, even regarding safety and petty incidents and stuff, you'll see like viral posts, but you can't basically tie them to any account because the person is speaking in isolation. Usually when you reach out to them, it's like maybe they are reposting it from somewhere and they don't know where the original one even started. So yeah, hope that gives you some context around how that impacts our business. The second one around social culture is interesting, but I think, yes, it's like when we become urbanized and we basically westernized, rather, we sort of emulate what we see. And it's the same, moving from compound houses to individual detached apartments and houses. It's like we're moving apart, and now people appreciate things like privacy. And I guess when you look at the pyramid of your needs, those things become, as you get to a certain level of affluence, you care about things like privacy and solitude and peace of mind. And because you are full, you are not hungry. You're not hungry anymore. So I think it's just a byproduct of, I guess, the country doing better. I'm caveating this because it's not always better. You sacrifice something for that growth and that westernization. But pool is a thing. HCV is a thing. HCV is high capacity vehicles, which we piloted in Egypt in 2018. And obviously with COVID now, we kind of slowed down on those plans. But Uber Pool and Uber HCV products are definitely something that we want to do. And that would basically be a trotro in Ghana. And that would allow people that are not able to pay for their own ride, or maybe, people can afford Uber, but maybe not every day. So sometimes they want to use a low cost option, and that'll be easier on their pockets. So it's not completely gone into the one person, one car system. We have other products that have that model that look more like what we're used to from a cultural perspective. And then the use of bikes is the same thing, right? We had Jump, which was a line of Uber. So Jump bikes, I think we have some people that know Jump bikes, have used Jump bikes, and you can basically book it through the app as well and ride. So you don't necessarily have to be riding in the car. It's not something that we have in Ghana, because bike riding culture is not really huge outside of the suburbs here. But in East Africa, we have Boda, which is big there. So Boda is motorcycles, and Street Hail is super effective. You just hop on and that's how people move around there. In Ghana, with regulations, that's not legal at the moment. And in Nigeria, it's also not legal at the moment. So it's not something that we're doing much of in West Africa. But there have been calls for it in Ghana to legalize Boda as a means of transportation for more than just commercial use. So if that happens, we will be the first to launch an Okada or a bike product in Ghana. We've actually already started speaking to policymakers about it, and we're advocating for it to be legalized.
What about Zamija? Zamija in Togo. Togolese have Zamija. They call their Okada Zamija. And I know Boda is in Uganda, to be specific.
Yep.
Yeah, so in Togo many years ago, when I was there, they called it Zamija. I don't know whether they've formalized it into the system. But in Ghana, it's a promise. It's a political promise. But we'll see how it goes.
Okay, so Jessica, I have a question for you. So regarding climate change and vehicles Uber uses in Ghana, what are your long-term plans for electric cars, etc.?
So EV is a priority for the company from a global perspective. I think self-driving and EV both. We have a partner that we just recently launched a partnership with in Nigeria. They're called Move Africa. And they started with 200 vehicles. You appreciate that electricity in Nigeria is not as stable. So for them, it's actually easier to get petroleum. And so they went with that model. But because we're looking to pilot with them in Ghana, at least, in half one of next year, they've made a commitment to coming in with EV. And so, I'm looking forward to starting that. I don't think as much of a thing here. Clearly, but I think it would be a good opportunity for us to have such a large fleet partner that introduces this type of vehicle, and it's actually something that we're looking at. I'm glad I had something to say. Imagine we didn't have any plans to do this.
That would have been terrible. Okay, thanks.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jeremy, and I have a question for Jessica. Hi, Jessica. Sure, I've been following you around for quite a bit in your recent sessions, but it's always insightful to hear about your journey, and you already know it inspired mine as well. So my question is twofold. So first, most people assume that to work in sort of the blossoming tech industry, you need to have a background in technology or IT. But obviously you didn't, and you shared that you primarily started off in corporate risk management, finance structuring. What would you say are the transferable skills that transitioned well into the tech space, almost regardless of where you're coming from? And how did you in particular manage that transition? That would primarily be the first one. So the second would be a continuation of that. So being a woman thrust into a role in an industry predominantly or dominated by primarily men, what were some of the things that you did to establish yourself as fit for the role, despite the fact that you are fundamentally disadvantaged, for lack of a better way to put it, in that space? So those would be my two-headed question. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeremy. And I'm glad you're able to join. Okay. So first one, around, why am I blanking? Jeremy, give me a keyword.
What transferable skills can you?
Exactly. Okay, so I don't have a background in tech. I've tried several times to learn how to code. At the closest I've gotten is SQL. But I've always worked around engineers. And the secret is that engineers usually don't know what they're doing. Just kidding. But it's true. Engineers really care about the thing. So they care about what they're building, but they don't really think along the line about what's the impact, how is this going to affect the other teams? At the end of the day, when the thing is ready, will there be a downside? They don't usually consider this just by nature. And I think maybe sometimes creative types or analytical types tend to be like that. But for an operations person who works closely with engineers, even in my last role at Google, most of it was just me trying to keeping them sane, right? So operations and project management, communication, stakeholder management, those skills, I dare say in any role will serve you very well, right? So, and I think it's quite common actually that you have a non-engineer in leadership at tech companies, right? Where it's like engineers, sometimes they don't want to do people management. Even within our organization, most of the engineers and the coders, they don't manage anybody. They rise and they have long careers. They've been in the company 15 years and all of that, but they just want to write code or they want to build a product and they don't want to have to deal with people and places and logistics because that interferes with their productivity, quite honestly. So stakeholder management, knowing how to bring people together, knowing how to enter a meeting and say, okay, what do we want out of this? And steering the ship such that at the end of the day, you arrive at that point, communicating properly, expressing yourself properly, being able to negotiate with partners, because engineers can't do that either. I'm bad mouthing them too much, but yeah, like negotiating with partners, law and policy makers, government people. You don't put an engineer there either, right? And usually they want to talk to people who speak the same language as them. So for instance, when we were partnering with Vodafone, we did a partnership last year to zero rates the Uber app. And that means that driver partners and riders can use it even with a zero balance, no data. Of course, you bring an engineer in that conversation because there are so many API integrations and they want to speak to each other. But at the end of the day, you need the commercial people, you need the marketing people to bring the story together, to sell the product, and to even engage the users in the way that lands it in the best possible way. So there's always room, even though it's a tech business, there's always room for other parts of the body to do the operations, to do the logistics, to do the commercial side of things. And yeah. Second question, being a female. So this one, like I say, I said it on the last session that we were both on, that you need to advocate for yourself. And that's something that we don't do enough as women. You need to take control of your whole career journey and say, okay, these are things I'm good at, and these are the things I'm going to basically establish myself publicly to be known for, or to be seen as a subject matter expert. If you spread yourself too thin, sometimes you can become jack of all trades and master of none. So even for me, I'm a generalist, so I suffer from that, and I'm always conscious of that, where it's like, I don't want to just be known as, okay, she's the manager, but it's like, what specific things are you also good at? So if it's your writing and your communications, if it's policy work, making sure that you invest and say, okay, what's this one thing that I want to do, and make so that I can stand out in the organization. Having a sponsor is another way. Taking that and saying, okay, this is somebody that knows my work and knows what I'm capable of. And that person, maybe could be male. A lot of the time, management, like you said, not so many females anyway. So you have a male sponsor as a female. The person is in rooms where you may not be present when your name is brought up for opportunities or for promotions. Most of the decisions that are made about your career, you are not present for them. Right from when they're employing you, conversations will happen about you in your absence. When they're promoting you, those conversations will happen in your absence. So having somebody that can advocate for you in your absence is key, especially for women, because you can be overlooked several times. And because we don't speak up for ourselves, you need somebody who has influence in the organization, who people listen to and look up to speak for you and to position you as somebody capable, and just kind of give you a +1 on top of what you're already doing for yourself, because nobody's look is sitting there thinking, how can I improve this other person's career? Or how can I give this person an opportunity? They're not thinking about that. We like to feel like we'll do what we do and then people will notice, but chances are they may not. Yeah.
Thanks, Jess.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Oh, I have a question, if there's time for it.
Yeah.
Thank you. So my question is really to do with the future of Ghana, because even though there have been discussions about electric cars, and of course people aren't going to stop driving their cars anytime soon, I am aware of the environmental impact, because it feels like the Ghana is following, or a lot of African countries are following in the footsteps of the West. And right now the West is realizing that the environmental impact they're having is not that great. But now we are ushering in an era of their old. It's kind of like their old is becoming our new. And I'm quite concerned about that. And this isn't to shade your company or anything of the sort like that, but just in general, do you have any suggestions? Again, I'm sure it wasn't part of the topic of the conversation, but do you have any suggestions regarding what we could do as a nation to essentially create our own path to a much better environmentally friendly or just greener society, rather than taking the footsteps of the West's old, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's very valid. I think we already had that culture though of importing used vehicles from the West. Governments can do what they can. I know that this government was made unpopular by certain revisions that they made about age of vehicle and all of that. And even still, it's like there's so much corruption that the vehicles still come in anyway. And like when they don't come in, things that are not supposed to be, or vehicles that are not supposed to be roadworthy somehow still get the certification that they need to be on the road. So for Uber, we operate within the law. And we say, okay, you've got to have this insurance to be on our platform. You've got to have this roadworthiness from the government to be on our platform. The additional criteria that we may add, just for comfort, like 4 doors, not damaged, AC, etc., that kind of thing is just a layer on top of what the government is already doing. So I think the role that we play here is to continuously engage policy makers and make sure that these things are being considered. But it's like they're also balancing politics with social responsibility in this because they're like, okay, we don't want to make any laws or make any revisions that make us unpopular with those who are going to vote for us. And we've seen that a lot, especially this year. We've been pushing for the first ride-sharing regulations in West Africa, where it says that, because Uber comes in and it's difficult to categorize us as commercial or as private. So we engage policymakers consistently to make sure that we don't have a gray area and we know where we stand. We're always writing white papers to them. We're always engaging and saying, okay, can we change this? This aspect of the law may be outdated. Maybe Parliament should reconsider evaluating if there's any value in making this change or that. So we're always there. And I think that you've pointed out, this is something that we can also push for. For us, we have a minimum vehicle age. Usually we wouldn't want to go, over 10, 15 years, but it's difficult because it limits the available, like those cars are just not available, right? So we also have to balance, do we want you to be stuck where you're looking for an Uber and the closest one is 15 minutes away because we've taken all the ones that are more than 10 years old off the platform and we're left with 50% of the vehicles? Or do we want to push for reliable products? And it's difficult. In every business, you have these conflicting desires or conflicting interests. And yeah, we just have to balance it in a way that puts safety first.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, does anyone else have any other questions? These are really good. Jessica, I think these are answered very well. Any other questions, guys?
Yeah, this is actually a personal question for Jessica. I'm so sorry if you've mentioned it, but what do you envisage for your future? Do you envisage continually working with Uber, or do you want to start your own company or transition back to Google? What's your 5-year or 10-year or 50 or 20-year plan?
Oh my gosh. Thanks for that, Sharon. I think that I enjoy working in tech. And so for the medium term, as in 5 to 7 years, I'll probably still be working for a company like Uber or for Uber. Do I want to start my own business? I think it's difficult for me to answer yes to that. I think I thrive when I make things better, which is usually in a consulting sort of space. So perhaps I may not start my own business in the traditional sense. If I start my own business, maybe it would be to help other businesses improve. Eliminate waste, become leaner, and just really fine tune the operations. So maybe after that 5 to 7 year mark, that's what I see myself doing. But in the short term to medium term, I'll probably be working for like an Uber or Google or Facebook or who knows, wherever the opportunity is sweetest.
Thanks. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Friend Pear is asking about corporate social responsibility.
Yeah, so the pandemic has definitely, highlighted that we need to step up in that area. For us, we always try to support with transportation. That's what we do. During the pandemic, we reached out to medics, healthcare centers, essential workers. We were trying to pledge globally 10 billion trips. And yeah, so we were like, okay, we want to get doctors to hospitals for free. We want to get essential workers, people doing like food banks, and then there was like sexual violence was at a high during that period as well. So we partnered with certain NGOs as well to give free rides to domestic violence victims to go to safe houses. We also were handing out free masks, free sanitizers. Some of the meeting rooms at our offices are still full of boxes of masks. People don't want to wear them anymore, so I don't even know what to do with them. But yes, all these donation exercises, and then also just getting people, like now we're supporting with blood donation drives to get people for free to go donate blood at no cost, no transportation cost to them. And then for the election coming up, we're also thinking about helping people, some civic responsibility as well, to get them to the polls without having to consider transportation costs. So yeah, it's the platform that's really the power. So we do most of our CSR through that. Yeah. So yes, lots of CSR.
Actually, I had a question related to the pandemic. I mean, what's been the most challenging aspect of operating in this time? I mean, now things are kind of going back to normal-ish in Ghana, but those first, let's say 4 months must have been really stretching you. I mean, I think the one thing I saw was some misinformation about whether Uber was operating, which I saw you had to clarify publicly several times.
Yeah, it's crazy how wildfire starts like that. And it's funny, the messages that you want to get out there never catch on quite as quickly, but the bad news travels fast. It was not true. There was a rumor that Uber had shut down operations because of the pandemic and all of that. We wouldn't do that. Okay, so I think the biggest challenge has been communication with drivers. I was a huge proponent, and I still am a huge proponent of in-person training, in-person onboarding. And with the pandemic, it's become very challenging. We have high levels of fraud in African countries where people are able to, superimpose a passport picture on a license and sign up with the same license several times and that kind of thing. So you have to have sophisticated fraud rules that can catch these things. But sometimes there's some good actors that are caught in the crosshairs. Sometimes because they know that the final stage is in person, they'll come and then they won't succeed, and so it basically discourages them from doing it in the first place. I liked in-person training because it was more interactive. Drivers could ask questions and really get the meat of what we wanted them to know about customer service and make sure that we're putting the best people on the application or on the platform. Now with the pandemic, everybody's dreams have come true. All the people I was fighting for, because I fought hard to keep in-person processes. Okay, from an operational perspective, it's not a very lean thing. It's not a very scalable channel. You need to move to online channels where people can just watch a video online and all of that. But it's here, I know that they're probably in some cafe, or maybe their thing is playing and they are not even paying attention, or somebody is going to take the test for them, etc. There's so many ways that people game the system, but it's difficult to do that in person. But now with the pandemic, I'm forced to basically leverage these scalable channels that I would have ordinarily not wanted to use, and just trust that people are doing the training and trust that the right people are getting on the platform. And it makes me very uneasy. I think that's what I would call out.
Wow, yeah. I don't think, yeah, I wouldn't have even considered that. That's,
Yeah, there's a lot of different aspects
yeah.
to Uber because, yeah, I think during the pandemic, most people even assumed, oh, I mean, we're on lockdown, so you guys are not working, right? Like, I'm not the one driving the car. There's so much work that's going on in the background, and that's actually gone up because at the same time, we're also doing all these CSR efforts, trying to scale Uber medics. And then we obviously, because 70% of the business was, I mean, we were down 70% as a business globally. Impacted several colleagues of mine. Like we had layoffs, we lost like half of the Ghana team.
Wow.
Across everything, we lost like a third of the team. And globally, I mean, it affected all verticals of the business. So now after the pandemic, we're entering into recovery and there's more work to be done, but fewer resources to do it. So everybody is very stretched this 2020. I see there's a question on chat asking about the 25% fee. It wouldn't be a conversation about Uber if the 25% fee didn't come up. Yes. So drivers historically have always complained about this. Let me just give you some knowledge that maybe is not like known by the average person. Like I said earlier, Uber operates on a week-to-week system. Every week we run some kind of promotion or some kind of incentive for driver partners. We have a marketplace, so as you can appreciate, we have a demand side and a supply side. If there's a rider that wants to go from place A to B in a particular location, they are the demand, and they are, let's say they are in a busy part of the city. If there are lots of cars in that area, that's the supply side. So drivers on that supply side will have a high efficiency because that's the busy part of the city. So let's take Osu on a Friday night, visualize. Demand and supply have to meet, and it has to be efficient in a way where we're not losing trips in it. So in the sense that if a request comes through, it should go all the way into becoming an actual trip, and then that trip should become a completed trip. You have dissatisfaction when requests are not converting to trips. So people are making requests and for some reason, maybe they can't find each other, they can't connect, or they get lost, and that doesn't convert into a trip. So from the time you open the application, through when you request, through when it becomes a trip and all of that is tracked, and we monitor that to make sure that we have the best conversion. So we do these promotions depending on how the city is faring during the week. That promotion may be on the demand side or on the supply side. Take a situation where you have 15 cars and nobody to go anywhere. But maybe if they had a promotion or a discount, they'll say, okay, maybe let me not drive today. I'll use an Uber today, right? And so in such a neighborhood, the promotion would be on the demand side. We would run promos and say, get 50% off your first 2 trips, or, and then that means that we're getting more requests, and then we're getting more trips out of that marketplace. So if you have a city that's generally undersupplied, okay, where it means that there's always demand in that city, people are moving. Listen, Ghana was on lockdown, but people were still moving, okay? And we came out of lockdown and demand recovered quicker than supply did. So structurally, Accra is usually undersupplied, yeah, where there's been demand since Uber launched from day one. If you remember, if you were here, those days used to be 20-minute ETAs and things, because people would have to wait for someone to come and pick them, and that's just how much demand we had. So on a weekly basis in Accra, there is some kind of promotion running on the driver side, okay? So this promotion can be at 5%, 10%, 15%, 20%. As at the beginning of this year, we're running 20% promos on the driver side, which meant they were getting bonuses on trips. So if maybe, let's say you take a 10-city trip, they were making 12 on that, okay? What does that mean for the effective service fee? 5%. What does that mean for the effective service fee? Even when we're spending 10%, it means it's 15. And I can confirm that there has not been a week where we're not running promotions in Accra. So when drivers talk about 25% service fee, please know that in a market as structurally undersupplied as Accra, it can never be the case because we're spending to incentivize supply to make sure that the product is reliable. And once we're doing that, each and every driver is earning a bonus on their trips, which means that their effective service fee is reduced by that investment amount that we're making. Okay, so sometimes maybe it's a complex idea for them to understand, but we'll say something like do 5 trips and get 50 cedis on top of your regular earnings, or do 15 trips and get 75 cedis, something like that. And that on an average will translate to 10% investment, 15% investment. And so we're not charging 25%. Cool. So next time somebody makes this argument, you can tell them this new thing that you know about how Uber runs and how our marketplace balance is achieved.
Thank you. Okay, so we're aiming to end at 7:30. I see we have a question from Sethlina. I think that's going to be our last question. It's in the chat.
Okay, so she's asking about driver earnings on the platform. We have driving hour limits of 12 hours per day. So if you were driving every single day, 7 days a week, yeah, you could drive 12 hours a day, but that's not realistic, right? Let's say drivers, highly engaged drivers are driving about 50 hours a week. The average fare in Ghana is about $3. So, and trips per hour, I would say, at least pre-pandemic, it was at least 1. Okay, 1 point something, but let's just discount it to 1. So if you're engaged and you're in a busy part of the city, on average, you're doing a trip every hour, taking $3, you're driving 12 hours a day, that's $6 a day, less your service fee of 15 to 25%. And yeah, your fuel and all of that. So $36, let's just round that down to like 160-ish, 160-ish cedis a day. Less your, so you could do some back of the envelope math and see what that comes to with gas, maintenance, data, and fuel. Oh no, I already said that. Gas and then maybe call credits. Yeah, that's for someone who owns their car. If you have to rent the car, then that cost also needs to be considered. And a bunch of people need to rent cars.
Yeah, sorry. So I want to find out. So considering the safety of your passengers, if a driver drives for more than 12 hours a day, isn't that too much? And how do you track the drivers to know how many hours they've done?
Yeah, so like I said, it's a cap. So 12 hours is a cap. You can't drive for more than 12 hours a day. We introduced that cap specifically because of safety. Driving hour limits, we said, okay, safety first. We could have drivers be driving around the clock, but at some point we need to tell them to get offline and sleep and come back. If you leave certain drivers, they will drive and fall asleep behind the wheel without thinking about the consequences. So that's why that feature exists, and it's just a timer in the application. So it just adds up all the time that they are online. You can be on the app, but you're not online. So when you hit the go button, there's a go button on the driver app, you hit go online, then it starts counting the minutes. So once you get to 12 hours, it will force you offline.
Sethlina, are you good with that answer?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, great. I had a question about Uber Eats, but
Sure, let me just answer and say that, like, girl, Ghana has been ready for Uber Eats since.
Oh yes,
a very big missed opportunity, but Eats as a business model is a little problematic. It's difficult for it to be profitable, yeah, because it's a 3-way marketplace. Ours is just, just us and the driver. But this one is
restaurants
and the driver. So sometimes the space can get a bit dicey, and I don't think they've cracked making profits on Eats, even in the largest Eats markets. Yeah, so Eats expansion has been slow as a result. And I don't think that in the short term, I could say that it's coming to Ghana. We got a very big office basically on the promises that Eats is coming, and then after the pandemic, we had to shut down Eats even in Egypt, and Egypt was quite a big Eats market. So I'm not too optimistic about us having Uber Eats in Ghana in the short term.
Fine, I'll continue using the collect feature.
Yes, Uber Connect. So
Yeah.
you order.
Connect, yeah, I'll collect. Yeah, that's what I've been using all this time actually. Get my food to Oyarifa.
Okay.
Yeah, Jessica, thank you so much. I mean, this was amazing. I had never actually heard the full story, so this was really great for me to just kind of see, see how it really went behind the scenes. Because yeah, there are points when it seemed like you had just kind of breezed through application processes.
No.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Thank you so much for opening up this series. I'm gonna say if anybody has any further questions for Jessica, they can email me and I will pass them on. So I'll just put my email in the chat. Sorry, for those who don't know, I am the president of the Ghanaian Society of Cambridge for this year. And yeah, please join us for our events coming up. I think we have one more event for the school year. We have our Bronia trivia nights coming up on the 2nd of December. So please look out for that. Yeah, Jessica, thank you so much for making the time.
You're welcome.
Join us for our other events. Welcome everyone who joined us today, and I hope to see you all again. So I'm just going to put my email in here for anyone who wants to note it down and send me additional questions for Jessica. So thank you
guys for having me. I enjoyed it.
I'm glad you did. I'm actually so glad and relieved that you accepted. Thank you, Jess. Okay. I see someone has joined us to close us. Thank you, Kweku Ansah, for joining. We're just ending. Okay. Thank you, everyone, and good night. Please be safe.
Thank you, Jessica.
The pandemic is not over.
It's nice meeting you all. Bye.
Nice to meet you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Because weekends, no.